Good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines this evening.
Several authorities examine the clinical waste found in the Putlam shore. Joint opposition holds crucial meeting on being independent in parliament. Conflict among trade union leaders who support the former president. What is the real reason behind the Valikada prison protest by female inmates? A new commission established to look into salary anomalies.
Of the Valikada prison is ongoing.
The group of female inmates launched their protest on the roof of the building they are being held in around 8 yesterday morning, demanding the authorities to expedite their trials. However, an authority of the prison said the inmates are protesting the transfer of Disna Vasam, who is a senior jailer at the Valikada prison. Footage captured yesterday showed how several protesting inmates were calling out for this particular jailer by her alias, Amma.
We are not holding this protest because our madam left. Her presence here is irrelevant. We do not care. She is not a judge. We are using mobile phones even after she left. We said that Talatatu Korala must come into the prison. We have several requests. She is holding these prisoners without giving them bail. There are women who are in prison for having 1 or 2 grams of heroin. They have been here for several years. We request that the people who are in jail for less than 10 grams of heroin be released on bail or something of that nature. Or else they should ask us to remain in prison for a certain time frame and grant us bail. There is no point of us being kept in prison for 2-3 years.
The Secretary to the Ministry of Justice and Prison Reforms, WMI Adhikari, refrained from commenting on the matter to the media. Prison officials continue to refrain expressing views to the media because the ministry has imposed a sanction. There is some tension in the prison. We are enacting certain decisions we have taken regarding the prison. The prisons minister will do what is needed. Our problem is that the inmates didn't have this issue in the past. The question is why this is coming up with the government trying to control drugs. We can't change any government official when there is a requirement, when there are allegations or when there is an issue.
There appears to be a racket where chemical waste is being released to the Maoya, which sustains the daily needs of many people. This is a Newsfirst expose.
Though measures have been taken by authorities to put up posters creating awareness on protecting the Maoya, which flows down from the Siddhantriya area of the Vennapo Divisional Secretariat, the situation today is rather disappointing. A racket where locals in the area are being used to wash disposed polythene waste and discarded computer parts in the Maoya has been going on for a prolonged period of time. Used printer toners are also being washed in the Maoya, which has resulted in the toner ink to mix with the water.
එයා කොච්චර කරනවද ගංග වටේ?
ඒව නම් දන්නේ නැහැ මහත්තයා. අපි ඒක කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ යා. කුසිලයකට බය වෙන්න එපා. මගේ බඩු ග්‍රාම සේවක නෝනවත් ගෙන්නලා එයා කිව්වා මගේ බඩු මේවා මං ගෙනියනවා කියලා. මං එයාලා කරනවලු ඒක.
තව කොහෙද කරනවද දෙපසට?
එයාලා කොච්චි කරේ මේ ඉන්නේ ඕන නම් දරුවෝ බැලුවා. එල්ල තමයි
කොපෙන්න නේදල්ල
මේ
කියන්නේ කුඩු වගේද යන්නේ
ඕ කුඩු වගේත් නෙමෙයි උඩින් නිකන් යනවා හොදපුවාම දැල්ලක් වගේ තියෙන්නේ මේ
පොඩි චූටි කුඩක් යන හොදද්දි ඇතුලෙන් මේ ගලාගෙන වතුරේ ඔහොම යනවා.
ඔකන තේරුන්නේ නැද්ද ඒක නරකයි කියලා?
ඒක නම් තේරුන්නේ
අපිට නම් දැනුන්නේ නැහැ. පස්සේ කිව්වට පස්සේ තමයි මාත් ඒක පිළිගත්තේ මොකද අපි.
මෙහෙම දාලා මේ මෙයා යනවා ඒක පාරයි ඊට පස්සේ රෙදි කැල්ලක් දාලා මේ වතුර කොහොම යනවා මෙතන තමයි අපි තියෙන්නේ වෙන කිසිම දෙයක් නැහැ නේ එහෙනම් ඒ රූටද දැන් දැන් මහත්තයා දැක්කනේ මේ මොකුත් නෑනේ මේකනේ.
වෙන්ද කළු පාටට යනවනේ.
ඔව් යනවා චුට්ටක් යනවා සමහර ඒවල නෑ සමහර ඒවල තියෙනවා ඇතුලේ. කරන්න එහෙම ගියා නම් කොච්චර මේකද? හොඳ නැති වෙයිද මහත්තයා මේ කුඩ අපි නතර දෙන්න කෝල්.
ඔව් ඔව්. දැන් මේ කවුද දුන්නේ හොදන්න?
හොදන්න දුන්නේ කොච්චි කඩේ කෙනෙක්. එයා තමයි හැම එකකට මේක ඉපත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
ඔක්කොටම යනවා මෙන්න මේ.
එයා කිව්වා අපිට කිසි දෙයකට බය වෙන්න එපා. ඒක වල රස්සාවක් නේ කෙරුවේ.
The Marine Environment Protection Authority took direct action in this regard. This has been prohibited. But the issue is we cannot file a case because we cannot prove what has happened. This eventually flows into the sea. We have the videos, but we need proof to file a case.
If waste was been disposed there, we could have been informed and we would have taken some sort of action. But we were not informed. I can look into it. The Gram Nildar is also taking part in a program here. No, we haven't, which is why I was unaware. We have an environmental committee as well, but they did not receive such a report either.
Even though locals in the area claim the Gram Maniladari officer of Siddhantriya is aware of the issue, she was unaware of this environmental pollution until we addressed the matter to the divisional secretary. When Napo Divisional Secretary Sujiva Fernando said she personally intervened and looked into the matter this afternoon. According to Fernando, waste being washed in the Maoya has been stopped with the intervention of the Marine Environment Protection Authority. It was a business entity in the Kochikade area which was using the locals of Siddhantriya for this purpose. Though it has been stopped, who will be held accountable for the environmental pollution that has been caused? What measures have the authorities taken to bring these culprits to the grasp of the law?
Several media reports
Liu Gusheng, chairman of China Banknote Printing and Minting Corporation, wrote in an article in May in China Finance, a bi-monthly journal run by China's central bank, that the company had seized the opportunities brought by the initiative and successfully won contracts for currency production projects in a number of countries, including Thailand, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Brazil and Poland. Online reports claim that money production plants of the state-owned Banknote Printing and Minting Corporation across the country were running at near full capacity to meet an unusually high quota set by the government this year. Since 1986, Sri Lankan currency was produced by De La Rue Lanka Limited, a joint venture between De La Rue and the Sri Lankan government. However, the central bank said that there are plans to explore issuing a panda bond in the onshore market in China as well as a samurai bond in Japan. Responding to a query by Newsfirst, the central bank denied media reports that China was printing money for Sri Lanka. The Indian Finance Ministry has also rejected media reports claiming that China is printing currencies for India among other countries.
A discussion forum on the state of human rights in the Maldives was held at the BMICH yesterday. The forum was organized by South Asians for Human Rights and Amnesty International.
Speaking at the forum via Skype, former South Asia researcher for Amnesty International Abbas Faiz spoke on Chinese influence in the Maldives and in the region.
When we talk about, China within the Maldives, it becomes very complicated. And I think the Maldivian businessmen from all sides of the political life, they have to understand that China in the long run is not going to be good for democracy. The Maldives is under heavy debts from China, and we know that some of these debts are actually being kind of siphoned into whatever corrupt systems that exist. And the difficulty is that unless really politicians and business people of all sides understand the magnitude and the significance of this problem, is not going to be solved, because then we are going to be left with a situation like Sri Lanka, with a situation like Myanmar, when in Sri Lanka, immediately after the change of government, the rhetoric was that they will be moving away from China, but then they realized that the Chinese debts had to be repaid, and that is going to be difficult. So now China is coming back to Sri Lanka. China is going back to Myanmar. And when China goes to a country, we know that the level of repression in that country actually increases, because the leaders of all these countries, they want to model themselves on the big model that exists in China, president for life. Xi Jinping in China has actually turned himself into president for life. Yamin Abdul Gayoom in the Maldives is planning to do that. Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh is planning to do that. If they stand in front of the Chinese, kind of embassies and say, look, we don't want you to sponsor dictatorship in our country, I think there will be a change, and that change I can actually believe that is likely to happen if that kind of action is taken.
The event was attended by lawyers and activists, including the former Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission of the Maldives, Ahmad Tolal, who is currently the Senior Program Coordinator for Transparency International Maldives, and former Chairman of the Maldivian Elections Commission, Fuad Tawfiq.
In writing, we have a very wonderful constitution, penal code and laws. After 5 years, some amendments have been brought during this government's time, and it has not only modified but jumbled the constitution. A lot of unconstitutional laws have been passed by the parliament. So anything that comes to the president has to be passed.
I don't think any one of us here do not have an understanding of the kind of influence the Parliament wields on independent institutions in the country. And I don't think at the moment we can actually refer to them as independent institutions, primarily because they have been handpicked to do the bidding of the government. So they're not really independent institutions, but an extension of the work of the government.
Newsfirst reported yesterday how Indian clinical waste had washed up on the Puttalam shore. The Marine Environment Protection Authority and several other institutions inspected the location today.
Clinical waste could be seen on the coast extending for about 10 kilometers from Udaipur to Toduava area in Puttalam. Vaccines, various syrups and pills and other clinical waste as well as containers could be seen among the waste.
Sugar patient use பண்ண injection வந்து இந்த band சிலங்க இல்ல அந்த band வந்து அடுத்து வந்து இது ஒரு gastric band ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்கா இந்தியாக்கு வர band அதுவும் இல்லாம இது வந்து லக்லூஸ் இது வந்து லூஸ் மோஷன் போறதுக்கு குடிக்கிற ஒரு சிரப் உண்டு ஸ்ரீலங்கா நார்மலா இதுல வந்து பேப்பர் கலர் தான் கிரமஃபீன் மட்டும் தான் வரும் இந்தியால தான் கிரமஃபீன் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் வர இந்தியால மட்டும் தான் ஐக்கியது இது வந்து ஸ்ரீலங்கால அந்த பிராண்ட் வரல அந்த பிராண்ட் வந்து பிராண்டா இந்த ஜெனரிக்ல வரல வந்து பட் ஒன்னும் எக்ஸ்பயர் இல்ல எல்லாம் வந்து இதுக்கு பாருங்க புண்ணூல் அது உங்களுக்கு காயங்களுக்கு ஏற்பட்ட அதுக்கு பூசுற க்ரீம் இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய கிடைக்குது அந்த ஆயுர்வேதிக்ல பாதிக்கிற லிக்விட் ஐட்டம் இதுல பேர் என்னன்னு தெரிய இந்த மாதிரி ஏன்னா வந்து எல்லாம் வந்து இந்த பாசை இல்லைன்னா இந்தியா பாசை அந்த ஒரு என்ன பாசைன்னு தெரியாது அந்த மொழியில் லாங்குவேஜ் இருக்கிறதால என்ன மருந்து கண்டுபிடிக்கல அதுவும் நார்மலா வீட்டில் யூஸ் பண்ற உஜாலா perfume அந்த மாதிரி comfort அந்த மாதிரி எல்லாம் இந்தியா ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்கா இந்தியாக்கு நடிக்கிற manufacturing தான் எல்லாமே இருக்குது பட் எல்லாத்துக்கும் வந்து எக்ஸ்பயர் டேட் இருக்குது.
A group of officials of the Atomic Energy Regulatory Council arrived at the location and inspected the garbage for radioactive material. They concluded the preliminary inspections and said that there were no radioactive material at the location. The officials of the Marine Environment Protection Authority segregated the garbage this afternoon.
As per the research that we carried out, we were able to segregate the garbage as plastic bottles, cosmetic items as well as clinical waste from India, China and Netherlands. We will carry out this research in Manpuria in Kalpitia. We will dispose these items properly.
The Marine Environment Protection Authority says the clinical waste could have been washed up from the Kerala area in India.
We are now under the southwest monsoon, and the southwest monsoon currents basically along the west coast of India and west coast of Sri Lanka goes from west to east. So the currents which come across comes along the western Indian coast, comes to the south of the tip, comes into the Gulf of Mannar and then forms into Sri Lanka. So what happens is that then you also have the wind. So the combination of the currents coming from north of Sri Lanka around the southern part of India and the winds pushing anything which is floating onto the beaches of Sri Lanka is where this accumulation would occur. So most of this medical waste would have originated mainly along the western coast or the southwest coast of India. So the southwest coast of Tamil Nadu and maybe as far north as Kerala.
There are several problems regarding the clinical waste found on the Puttalam shore. There are floods in South Indian state of Kerala as a result of heavy rain. If it got washed away from Kerala, how is it that the waste contains clinical waste and no other garbage? Was it dumped in the sea purposely by an organized group? There are several ways to identify as to whether this is waste from a hospital. A senior official at the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka speaking to Newsfirst said they are concerned about the situation surrounding clinical waste in the northwestern coast. He added they will check with relevant authorities in India as to whether this incident of clinical waste reaching the Puttalam shore has any connection with the recent flooding in the South Indian state of Kerala.
The graduation ceremony of the Oxford College of Business was held in Colombo last evening. The event was attended by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
To pursue your own careers, I ask you to contribute your expertise in suitable measures to the national interest. There has been a great deal of discussion in the media recently about free trade agreements, their respective merits and shortcomings in your universities and professional institutions. This country possesses a reservoir of expertise which can be made use of the effective your well-being for generations to come. It is therefore the duty of us all to ensure that we obtain the best possible terms. Our country's vital interests must not be endangered by absence of a proper policy.
We now cross over to Newsfirst Chaturanga Haparachi for the Action TV report.
Good evening to you, Arundhati. Good evening to our viewers. On our Action TV report, we are going to focus our attention on the energy sector of our country once again. Now, the energy sector, the CEB and other related institutions are governed by the Ceylon Power or the Ceylon Electricity Act. I'm going to draw your attention to this particular document that you see behind me. This is a page that we have obtained from the Ceylon Electricity Act. Now, our clause 9 of the Ceylon Electricity Act very clearly mentions that if a power purchase license is to be granted to a power plant, if the Treasury decides that the power plant has government shares, then the power purchase license will be granted to this particular power station or power plant in question. Now, in April, the government and the CEB decided to go in for a 3-year agreement with a company a power plant rather, by the name of ACE Ambilipitia. Now, this is Article 43 of that same Act, which clearly mentions that if you are to go into a power purchasing license with a private entity, there should be a competitive bidding process that should be carried out. ACE Ambilipitia is a completely private power plant. Now, was there a power purchase for the power purchase license to be granted? Was there a proper competitive bidding process carried out, or for the agreement was there a proper tender process being carried out for this purpose? That is question number 1. Now, if this is what is mentioned in the Constitution, if this is what is mentioned in the Act, then if there is a violation pertaining to this Act, then it is a violation of the Constitution of the country and it's deemed illegal. Now, and write about these deals pertaining to the power purchasing license and the energy sector of our country. While highlighting what the minister said, we want to draw your attention to another problem surrounding the same issue. When this particular deal, the agreement, was to be extended for a 3-year period, the Deputy General Manager of Energy Purchases writes to the General Manager of the Ceylon Electricity Board saying that he cannot approve 850 million rupees as a payment that needs to go into ACE Ambilipitia. What happens to this DGM who says he cannot approve this money going out. He is removed from the CEB. And what does the general manager of the CEB do? He writes a letter to the secretary to the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy, who is Dr. Suren Batagoda, asking for a special permission for these funds, 850 million rupees, to be released so that the payments can be made. Does he receive the approval? Yes, he does. But what happens? The secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy also highlights, while approving this payment of 850 million rupees, highlights the fact that this particular payment is in violation of Clause 9 and Clause 43 of the Ceylon Electricity Act. So this is the situation we have pertaining to the payments that have gone into AS Amlipitia and the extension of the agreement pertaining to AS Amlipitia. We can only forward this story for the attention of the President's Secretary. That's all we have from Action TV this evening. It's back to you, Arundhati.
The High Commission of Pakistan and the Pakistani community based in Sri Lanka celebrated the Independence Day of Pakistan with national zeal and enthusiasm and the commitment to protect the country against perils.
The acting High Commissioner of Pakistan, Jabaz Khan, hoisted the national flag in a distinctive ceremony held at the High Commission premises today. The acting High Commissioner read out the message of the President of Pakistan, Mamnoon Hussain.
As you know, Pakistan had established diplomatic relations with Sri Lanka immediately on her independence in 1948. Since then, these relations, which are based on mutual understanding and common interest, have flourished continuously. Through sustained efforts on both sides, our relations have moved forward and mutual friendship to strategic partnership in the region. Pakistan has always supported Sri Lanka in her quest for national security, promotion of democracy, rule of law and economic progress. Long live Pakistan-Sri Lanka friendship, Pakistan-Sri Lanka friendship, Zindabad. Thank you very much.
Also in local news, Cabinet has decided to appoint a special salaries commission to increase the public sector salaries and to remove salary anomalies. Issuing a communique, the Ministry of Finance and Mass Media said the commission will be tasked with increasing the salaries of all state sector employees and to resolve the salary anomalies prevalent in certain sectors, including the railway service. The commission has been given a period of 2 months to submit recommendations in this regard. The Commission will also have to look into the impact of certain circulars pertaining to the salaries and allowances of state sector employees. The Ministry of Finance and Mass Media says the government is hoping to introduce a new salary scheme based on the recommendations put forward by the Commission.
Very good evening to all of viewers. You're joining me, Aparna Fernando, on Weather First. There was a rise in the rainfall as well as in the windy conditions in past 24 hours. Now let's take a look at the incidents which occurred due to these weather conditions. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast for upcoming days. Considering tomorrow and day after, there can be a rise in the rainfall as well as in the windy conditions in the southwest part of the country. Even the wind speed can increase in western and southeast sea areas. Gusty winds can be expected across the country, especially in central, Sabaragamu and Uva provinces. Heavy showers can be expected in central and Sabaragamu provinces today and tomorrow. Even day after tomorrow and on 17th, showers can be expected in most of the places in the country except in Batiklo. On 18th, skies can be cloudy in Putlam and Batiklo, and few showers can be expected in Jaffna, Colombo and Galle. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast for Colombo.
The group of MPs convened at the official residence of the former president located on Vijayarama Mawatha in Colombo earlier this evening. We are hoping to become independent in Parliament. The proposal is currently being discussed. We will make a decision today. Let us see. We are ready for anything.
We will agree to any common decision made by the joint opposition under Mahinda Rajapaksa's leadership. It is not about the parliamentary seat. We have to send this government home, even if it means we have to risk our lives. The country is more important.
We will have to agree if the group makes a decision. We will not be able to work in an alliance otherwise. So even if we do not agree with the decision made unanimously, we will have to come to an agreement as a team.
Now, those were the views expressed following the parliamentary group of the joint opposition that was held under the auspices of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa this evening. Now, meanwhile, an argument broke out at a trade union meeting held once again under the patronage of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Mahinda Kahandagama, who arrived at the meeting held at the Abhirama temple in Narhempita, spoke out in this manner. The former president arrived at the location thereafter. During court proceedings, the accusation against me was that I threatened a witness. These are the people who created a problem in the railway sector and made the public strike. It has backfired now. That is how Mahinda Rajapaksa carries out politics. They want to gain undue advantages when the situation worsens. What happens at the end is that they create a conflict among themselves. This is third-class politics.
The official tenure of the Board of Directors of People's Bank is to end on the 31st of August. This also ends the official term of People's Bank Director Jehan Amaratunga, who obtained a 10 billion rupee loan from the bank for a company he serves as a deputy chairman.
Amaratunga was heavily scrutinized for obtaining such a large loan amount from People's Bank for MTD Walkers PLC, where he is a deputy chairman. While such a large loan amount has to be approved by the audit committee of the bank, it was Jehan Amaratunga himself who was the chairman of that committee. Minister of Public Enterprise and Kandy City Development Lakshman Kiryala has also requested the Prime Minister to take action regarding Jehan Amaratunga for misusing his position. Meanwhile, as such loans are to be directed to the bank's loans committee for approval, it is rather significant that for the first time in banking history that the People's Bank chairman Hemasiri Fernando was not in that committee. Is it likely that moments after the end of the tenure, Jehan Amaratunga will get away with these transactions with no legal action against him? Is it not imperative that a broad investigation is conducted and those accountable are brought before the law? The people are watching.
Richard Kofi Campbell, a member of the American reggae band Big Mountain, arrived in the island this afternoon. Richard arrived in the island to perform at the Colombo Music Festival 2018, which will be held on the 18th of this month. He will be performing with his band Big Mountain alongside several other international artists. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.